This season, like last season, we have at the very center of the season is the Tchaikovsky Festival. Now, you'll fondly remember, I think, the Beethoven and Stravinsky festivals of last year and the amount of energy that was palpable in the hall. I mean, the number of people, the energy of the orchestra, the whole musical scope. I mean, it was infectious. I was out in the town afterwards and I saw so many of you, and you just all looked like you couldn't even sleep because you had so much energy wound up inside of you. And that made me so happy, because it's exactly what I think this town needs. That's exactly what I think this orchestra needs, and that's exactly what we think we can do here at the Malmö Live. So, Tchaikovsky, a composer who everybody knows very well. But I also think that that composer is often looked at from maybe not always the right direction. For me, he's an incredibly sincere and sympathetic composer. Not a composer who writes the great Hollywood themes that have ended up in all of the movies, or the very sweet and sugary music that we think it is. In fact, I've structured the whole program in order for us to see Tchaikovsky as a person who was fighting for dear life for an idea that he was never able to realize. So, spoiler alert, it's going to be really depressive. But that was his life, and we have to be honest about that, and we have to respect that and honor it. And how lucky we are that he decided to chronicle his life with music and sharing that with us. At the beginning of the season and the end of the season, like a big tent, I've put the music of Anton Bruckner. And Bruckner, for me, is not only a composer who I adore, but is a composer who I think this orchestra is particularly well suited to perform. In our concert hall with its superb acoustics, you will not hear Bruckner like this ever again. You will never hear it in this new way. It's a way that I'm trying to go deep with the orchestra and producing and creating an aesthetic, a deep philosophy here. It's not only about the energy and enthusiasm that we get from the festivals, but it's about going deep into the souls of all of us and talking about what is there after life, what is there beside our physical being. And Anton Bruckner's music is so perfectly suited for that. The Fifth Symphony and the Eighth Symphony are two of his most remarkable pieces of music. They are like standing in Notre Dame Cathedral. They are absolutely perfect pieces of architecture and art. A place, a space to experience the most profound of human experiences and thoughts. Also in the season, we are presenting two works of Messiaen. Messiaen is very much like Anton Bruckner, but yet somehow his music is a little bit more exotic, if you will. It is a music that is painting with a completely different palette of colors. It's almost the difference of looking at a nice Renaissance painting and then looking at a Miro. They are just absolutely different, and yet still at the same time trying to address some of the same things, the general human condition. And Messiaen was a composer who, like Bruckner, was so focused on the spiritual and the afterlife, but yet somehow their music has nothing to do with each other, and yet at the same time, like I had said about Bruckner being a cathedral which you could sit inside and have all these deep and profound emotions, Messiaen creates exactly that space as well. The stillness at the end of Ascension is something that is unmistakable and unrepeatable and has never been tried and never been written like since Messiaen wrote this music. It is a music that simply makes a clock stop. Also this season with me, we're going to present a couple of combinations. The big combination that I'm excited about is the combination of Brahms and Schoenberg. Now, I know a lot of you are going to say Schoenberg is not for you, but I also know some of you say Brahms is not for you. And that just goes to show you that there is no composer that is for everybody, and that is perfectly fine. However, I want you to come, and I want you to keep an open mind for the way this music can sound and the way this music can be relatable to you and to everybody. Schoenberg is not this ultra pointy, nasty music. In fact, it is a music that is just an outgrowth from the music of Brahms. Many of us love the First Symphony, the piano concerti. So I thought, instead of presenting Brahms' piano concerti, let us present the Schoenberg piano concerto with one of the absolute top pianists now, Denis Kojukin, a good friend of mine and an absolute genius of the keyboard. You've never heard him here in Malmö, and he is so excited to come and join this orchestra and be in your Malmö live and to present this music. But this music is completely rooted, built out of the cathedral that is Brahms and Bruckner. And yet somehow he always kind of gets tossed aside as being overly analytical. Well, he did a lot in order to actually make people feel that way. In fact, he wouldn't talk about his music when he was alive. And he pushed people out of the concert hall and said, well, if you don't understand it, tough. I'm not Schoenberg. I didn't write the music, but I'm sure as heck going to try to make you love it the way I do. Also, we're presenting Brahms, who's going to be paired up with Schoenberg very often in the season. And we're presenting some of his most absolutely incredible music. We're presenting the Fourth Symphony, which is the very last symphony Brahms wrote. Brahms wasn't an old man when he wrote this. He was still a middle-aged, fiery and passionate human being. And in this music, you have the maturity and the emotional depth of an old man, and yet the youthful vigor of a middle-aged man who's talking about a life that has not turned out the way he thought it would. But on the other side of that, we have the piano quintet, orchestrated by Schoenberg. And this is just a piece that you can't miss. This is a piece of music that in the string quintet version is incredible. It is just so beautiful and oozes with joy. But you put it in the orchestra the way Schoenberg did it, and it becomes a massive party. It's an absolutely incredible piece of music that will just blow your socks off. And if you've never heard it live, you absolutely cannot miss it. I'm so excited to present that one to you. Another composer I will be presenting, who I'm particularly passionate about, is Elgar. Edward Elgar is a composer who I don't think is presented that often outside of his Enigma Variations or his cello concerto. I think it's very rare to ever hear his symphonies in Sweden. But it is absolutely unheard of to hear both of his symphonies in the same week. Why am I going to present those two symphonies in the same week? Because like Tchaikovsky, like Schoenberg, these are composers that to me are so often misunderstood that I felt the only way to really make the case for them is for you to be able to look at a larger body of their music and to experience it in a more intense way. Elgar is oftentimes cited as being an overly pompous and grandiose English monarch composer of the imperial nature of the UK at the time. But to me, that is completely not true. Elgar is a pan-European international composer who was speaking and writing music not only about love from the Italianate standpoint, to mysticism and religion and spiritualism in the German tradition, about nobility and restraint in the English tradition. And you mix all of this together and you get a scene, you get a music of a composer who is unbelievably vulnerable, unbelievably sincere, writing music that is so beautiful and so impactful and so deep that it just has nothing to do with this imperialistic idea of a grandiose English composer who is stuffy with a massive beard and mustache. It's just caricature of that person's image, but not of the content of his character and the content of his music. Paired with the Elgar symphonies will be another really tremendous activity for the orchestra. We're going to present, for the first time ever, a piece by Rautavaara that has never ever been performed, a world premiere in fact, Lost Landscapes. Rautavaara is perhaps one of the most respected composers, second to Sibelius in Finland, a composer who I really, really adore. And the MSO and I have been given the rights to premiere his music after his death. This will be just a remarkable moment in the history of this orchestra. It is like being able to put up a Picasso for the first time inside of your own museum. To present the world premiere of this composer is such an honor for the MSO and for the city of Malmö that it's something I hope all of you will come to experience and really be proud of. that your orchestra has been given the rights to do this. I'm going to be completing our 2021 season with a composer who you don't probably know very well right now, but I think by the time his world premiere comes around, you will know, and that is Karim Rustram. Earlier in the year, with Fauzi Highmore as guest conductor, we will present his clarinet concerto. And at the end of the season with me, I will present a brand new piece of music that he has written specifically for the MSO. Karim Rustram is a really nice friend of mine and a really interesting composer. And I've asked him to do something very, very, very specific for me. I told him about Malmö, I told him about the city, the Malmö Live, and the MSO. And I said, this is a city that is changing so quickly and evolving. And what is it going to become? We are in the process of defining. And that I want the MSO to be at the center of that conversation. I talked to him about all of the different people who have moved to Malmö from different countries, of different ethnic origins and different nationalities. So together we decided that we would present a piece of music that speaks about how humans over history have left home to find new definitions of home. And that is not unique to people from Istanbul or people unique to China or to the United States. Swedes have also had to leave home. Germans have had to leave home. French, everybody. This is a human story. And then what does that mean when we go to a new place? What can that mean for us? And I think Malmö is a beautiful, wonderful idea. A city where people can come together and live together, be together, share together, love each other, and broaden their sense of who we are to include new people. And so I've asked him to write a piece of music that tries to touch on this exact issue. And paired with Karim's piece at the end of the season is an incredible piece of music that I have always loved, the Rachmaninoff Second Symphony. And in the same idea that Karim's piece is going to speak a little bit about how our shared drama of human existence, of traveling and going to new places and redefining ourselves and redefining who we are because of the people in contact with us. Rachmaninoff was trying to define his own emotional state, a composer who was deeply depressed, deeply damaged from earlier in his life from other performances, and then wrote a piece of music that was about the overcoming of that, about the transcendence of his spirit, about the overcoming and triumphant nature of human existence. So I imagine some of you have seen on Facebook or Twitter some pictures from my office here at the Malmö Live, this big cart with a whole bunch of scores on it, about 300, 400 scores or so. And all of that was Swedish music, because I promised you that when I came here as your chief conductor, I would do Swedish music. But I needed to learn some first. I've learned a lot of Swedish music since then. And one of the first pieces I have really, really gotten excited to present is the Symphony No. 1 by Mellnäs. This is a composer I imagine a lot of you don't even know so well. I think people were expecting me to pick Larsens or Steinhammer or Pettersson, but no, Mellnäs. This symphony, when I opened the score, it jumped out at me. It is such a unique music, very distinctive. I haven't seen music like this before, and I thought, this I want to do. This I can't wait to conduct. So I hope you'll join me for that concert. On that same program, I'm going to present another piece of music that I really adore, absolutely think is so perfectly suited for the MSO. Mendelssohn's Symphony No. 3, the Scottish. This symphony, for me, is really one of the first Mendelssohnian pieces that I just fell in love with. And I think after our Beethoven festival last year, and also are doing a lot of Haydn and Beethoven and Mozart during the Corona lockdown, I think the orchestra has really cultivated a very high level of playing, a very elegant degree of execution. And I think it's just the right time to open that bottle called Mendelssohn. I'm so excited to present that, because it's just a composer I adore, And to do that with Melnas, and on the same program, Schoenberg Piano Concerto, there's really something there for everybody. Also this season, we have as honorary artist, my good friend, an amazing trumpeter, Håkan Hardingberger. I have to admit, before I came to Malmö, I didn't know Håkan at all. I'd heard about him, of course, as a world-renowned trumpeter, but I didn't have any engagement with him. And since being in Malmö for the last 14 months, I have found him to be one of the nicest and warmest-hearted human beings. Of course, he's world-class trumpet player, great cook, but even more than all of those things, he is a fierce advocate for the MSO and for the city of Malmö. He adores this city and this orchestra, and that is why we are so proud to have him as our honorary artist. I must admit that I am personally and very selfishly most excited about my collaboration with him at the end of the season with Brett Dean's Trumpet Concerto. Now, Brett Dean is one of the top, most exciting, remarkable living composers that are around right now. And he wrote this trumpet concerto for Håkan, and let me tell you what, this is just something to see and something to hear that is unlike anything else you've ever heard. In fact, he has completely taken the idea of a trumpet concerto, turned it upside down on its head, cut it in half, split it in 50 pieces, and put it back together, and then turned it right side up. And you haven't the slightest clue on what the direction is that this thing should be facing. It is a wild, unbelievable experience piece. And when Håkan showed it to me and said, "Would you like to do this?" It took me about 1 hour of looking through the score, and I called him up immediately and said, "We have to do this. We don't want to do this. We have to do this." So this for sure is something you don't want to miss. Of course, Håkan is coming earlier in the season to conduct his own program, and as always, it's going to be wonderful to see him in his multifaceted capacity as conductor and trumpeter. Also this season, we have an amazing conductor, Juraj Valchuo, one of my most esteemed colleagues, who I have absolute top respect for. He's going to be coming and conducting the MSO again, and will be presenting a very interesting program. On that program will be Nilsson's Symphony No. 4, The Inextinguishable, and that is a fantastic piece to not only to watch, because you see two battling timpanists, but also a piece of music that is just incredibly powerful and emotional and full of exceptional strength. And he's going to be just absolutely top. Fantastic. But on that program too, one of my most beloved colleagues in the orchestra, Susanna, our principal violist, will be presenting Bartok's Viola Concerto. Now, Bartok's Viola Concerto is just, it is the Mount Olympus of viola concerti. It is the Mona Lisa of the viola concerti. And Susanna is just such an incredible and beautiful musician. And I'm just really jealous that he gets to conduct her on this amazing piece of music. And I think you should all be there with bells on and lots of ticker tates and making a lot of noise for her, because it's just going to be an incredible concert. Speaking about other MSO musicians taking center stage, like Susanna, we have Marika, our wonderful concertmaster, who will lead an all-Mozart program a little bit later in the season. Marika is a wonderful artist, an incredible musician, a great violinist, and an exceptional leader, a person I've come to trust and rely a lot on in this orchestra. And I think she is so beloved in the city, and I think it's absolutely right for her to have a program where she leads the MSO. An orchestra program without a conductor is a very special thing, because one of the things I actually love is watching chamber music and hearing chamber music. This extremely sensitive, intimate exchange of ideas, very rapid, very quick. It's something so wonderful and unique to experience. This will be like that, except amped up quite a bit, because it's a larger group. And I'm so jealous that you get to be there for the concerts, because I would love to be there. I would absolutely buy a ticket to see that. In the early part of the season, we're going to be presenting Mahler's Ninth Symphony. This is a really important, incredibly powerful piece of music. It's the last completed symphony of Gustav Mahler, and I think one of the most intense, most heartfelt pieces of music that has ever been written. For me, it's 4 movements and 4 variations of goodbye. Goodbye to the city, goodbye to love, goodbye to nature, and goodbye to life. And these 4 goodbyes, as they were for me, are presented in such a vulnerable and human way, full of all of the angst and power and emotions that are within all of us, and yet offering us a glimpse of grace. It is something that is almost unrepeatable in the history of music. A unique 70-minute experience, being the summation of a human being's life, an idea of how does one say goodbye to something that we all love so much, life. This was programmed before Corona, and it seems to me that it's even more important that we hear this music now. Because as everybody is talking about returning to normal, I keep thinking to myself, why do we want to return to normal? Why don't we try to return to something extraordinary? Why don't we love more? Why don't we care more? Why don't we bring people closer? That's exactly what we have been missing in these months. This is exactly what we felt was missing when we were not allowed to go out and hug our family and hug our friends. So, I want people to come to the MSO, to the Malmö Live, because there we can emotionally hug each other and to realize that we were never ever alone, and we never will be alone so long as we come together. And the MSO is very much wanting to be at the center of that.